and losing, look, you got PFF grading you every week, like you were just referencing there before I came on. They're grading you. And now you go as a first-year quarterback, you barely know shit, and now everyone's telling you suck, and it takes a while to regain your confidence.
The operations aren't there. He's not the guy. Is that too soon?
Yeah, but I would argue this. You're assuming that everybody knows how to develop a quarterback. You're assuming that you're going into a program. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not – there's a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing when they're tasked with coaching a quarterback or calling an offense. So are you saying – I mean, just like we'd rank quarterbacks 1 to 32, do you rank offensive coordinators 1 to 32? Do you rank quarterback coaches 1 to 32? Well, what if you had the 32nd ranked coordinator?
The operations just ain't clicking, and the whispers are getting louder. Tom Brady came out swinging, flat out saying he's not the guy. But hold up. Is it really too soon to throw dirt on Shedeur Sanders? Brady didn't just call out the players. He went straight for the league and Cleveland's coaching staff. He said what everybody's been thinking. Players get judged under a microscope while coaches walk around untouchable, hiding behind clipboards and empty promises. Brady laid it out plain. Quarterbacks like Shedeur are grilled every single day, but the very coaches shaping them face no scoreboard of their own. And worse, some of these so-called experts don't even have the skill set to coach a real quarterback, yet somehow keep cashing checks and sitting in power positions.
And that's a hard thing to evaluate. But I'd also say there's not many people who even know what to do. It's not like they're CEOs of businesses. A lot of times they're football coaches, with all due respect. They're not running large corporations.
Right.
As Bill Parcells said, they're PE coaches a lot of times. They get elevated to, coaching positions.
That's not just hypocrisy. That's sabotage dressed up as strategy. And Brady wasn't done. He blasted those same coaches for daring to say Shedeur ain't on the level of Dillon or Flacco. He fired back with the real question. Have they ever given Shedeur the same first-team reps? Have they ever stood by him in practice, breaking down plays, actually teaching him the system? If not, how dare they call him unqualified? That's not coaching, that's politics. The way Brady sees it, if a quarterback is kept on the sidelines with no real support, then judged for failing, that's a sham trial. And let's be real, Shedeur's case proves it. One coach swears he's evaluating and developing him, while another hides behind silence, acting like Shedeur's future isn't even worth a straight answer. That kind of inconsistency exposes the truth. They don't know how to handle him, and they don't want to risk giving him the platform to prove them wrong. Without consistent reps, how is any quarterback supposed to shine? It's like being told to run a race but never given shoes. And here's the kicker. This ain't even new. Stephen A. Smith and Louis Riddick called this exact play months ago, warning that Shedeur was being set up to fail.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to tell you why. There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start lineup, and he hasn't had any reps with the first team at all.
They said loud and clear, this coaching staff never had a real plan to elevate him, only excuses to hold him back. Stephen A. let it rip when Shedeur was finally lined up for his first preseason start. He said it point blank, this wasn't an opportunity, it was a trap. Shedeur hadn't had a single first-team rep all offseason, not one chance to sync with the starters. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the coaches tossed him into a starting role like a pawn being sacrificed on a chessboard. Stephen A. called it exactly what it is, a setup, a move designed to make Shedeur look lost, so they could wash their hands clean and say, see, he ain't ready. But the reality? He was framed for failure before he even touched the field, and now the cracks in the coaching staff's agenda are finally exploding in public view. Messy, scandalous, and impossible to ignore. Louis Riddick jumped in with his take, and trust me, he didn't sugarcoat a thing. He agreed Shedeur Sanders would eventually get his shot, but he exposed the real issue. The man barely got any meaningful reps with the team. Riddick made it clear. If Shedeur wants to shine in those rare limited moments, he'd have to play at an insane level just to be noticed. That's not development. That's a setup with impossible expectations.
The preseason game. And here's the other thing, number two. You have to have people who advocate for you when you are a lower round draft pick. We don't know who's advocating for him within the organization because we don't know who stood up for him and who really wanted to draft him. So I can tell you this right now.
Think about it. How is Shedeur supposed to gel with the squad if he hasn't even been on the field long enough to build rhythm? No timing with his receivers, no real feel for the playbook in live action. And then boom, the coaches throw him in and expect fireworks. The pressure was stacked sky high and the coaches knew it. And the wild part, everyone could see the difference. Other players were given space, support, and reps. Shedeur was given excuses. Riddick didn't hold back. He dropped the truth that players drafted as low as Shedeur almost never sniff the first team unless somebody in the building goes to bat for them. Somebody with real influence fighting in their corner, but Shedeur didn't have that. No advocate, no real backing. Riddick's frustration hit the boiling point when he admitted it's not even clear who pushed for Shedeur's signing in the first place. That's insane. How can a franchise bring in a quarterback and not even have a clear chain of accountability for the decision? And then the bombshell dropped. Jimmy Haslam himself admitted he had no idea about the move to sign Shedeur. He basically shrugged it off and said it was all on the coaching staff. That confession was a red flag waving in everyone's face. If the owner wasn't even aware of the signing, then who exactly is running the show?
We understand what's going on here. That's why Haslam was in his car on a Friday talking about, I can't see it happening, because they weren't going to let it happen.
And more importantly, how can Shedeur possibly thrive in a system that didn't even plan for his arrival? That lack of clarity painted the picture of a front office and coaching staff completely out of sync. And Shedeur is the one paying the price. Instead of developing him, it looked like they were setting the stage to quietly shove him out. No reps, no structure, no support, just whispers of doubt building louder with every practice. And Stephen A. Smith, he tore into Haslam after those comments. He said straight up this wasn't some innocent slip-up, it was a calculated move. According to Stephen A., Haslam and others didn't just neglect Shedeur. They actively made sure he would never get a real chance. He spelled it out for everyone. You were not going to let it happen. And honestly, the more you look at the situation, the harder it is to say he's wrong. Haslam's casual dismissal basically confirmed what fans were already suspecting. Powerful voices in the room never wanted Shedeur to succeed from the start. By the time the dust settled, it was obvious Shedeur Sanders wasn't just battling defenses on the field, he was battling the politics of his own team. Reports started leaking that while veterans like Flacco and even Dillon Gabriel were getting endless reps with the starters, Shedeur was mostly watching from the sidelines. And when he did get thrown in, it was during meaningless snaps that didn't give him a fair shot to show what he could really do. That's not development. That's sabotage wearing a disguise. Insiders began whispering that the coaching staff was split right down the middle. Some believed Shedeur could be molded into the franchise quarterback of the future, while others quietly dismissed him as nothing more than a PR stunt attached to his famous last name. That internal tug of war left Shedeur in the worst possible position, stuck in limbo, fighting battles that had nothing to do with his actual talent. And then came the dagger. Conflicting reports about the playbook. Certain coaches hinted that Shedeur wasn't picking it up fast enough, but sources close to the team claimed he was never actually given the full playbook in the first place. How can you judge a quarterback's understanding when he's not being handed the same material as his so-called competition? That's like giving one student half the test questions, then failing him for not knowing the rest. Fans started connecting the dots and social media lit up with accusations of favoritism. Why did Flacco, a veteran clearly past his prime, continue to get endless opportunities while Shedeur was barely trusted with scraps? Why did Gabriel, who had only shown flashes, get promoted so quickly while Sanders was stalled at the back of the line? The optics were ugly and the excuses were running thin. What really fueled the fire, though, were the contradictions from leadership. One day, Stefanski would tell reporters Shedeur was part of the plan. The next, he'd dodge questions about whether Sanders was actually in line for reps with the starters. That inconsistency didn't just frustrate the media. It made the entire organization look shady, like they were intentionally moving the goalposts to keep Shedeur boxed in. And Stephen A., he doubled down on his earlier stance, this time flat out accusing the Browns of protecting their comfort zone instead of nurturing real talent. He argued that the staff was clinging to names like Flacco out of fear, unwilling to gamble on Sanders because giving him a real chance might expose how wrong they were in their evaluations all along. Louis Riddick backed that sentiment, warning that if the Browns didn't figure out their quarterback situation soon, they'd ruin Shedeur before he even had the chance to grow. And that's the nightmare scenario. A young quarterback, smothered not by his own mistakes but by a toxic system more interested in playing politics than winning games. At the heart of it all, this mess was never just about football. It was about power plays, politics, and control. Shedeur Sanders wasn't fighting for a roster spot. He was fighting against a machine designed to box him out. Every missed rep, every dodged question, every shady comment from leadership made it crystal clear. This was bigger than X's and O's. This was about who really held the keys inside the organization. The pattern was undeniable. Tom Brady sounded the alarm, Stephen A. Smith called it a setup, and Louis Riddick warned the system was broken. All three respected voices pointing to the same ugly truth. Shedeur wasn't being judged purely on talent. He was being suffocated by the environment around him. And when the environment is toxic, how can even the most gifted quarterback break through? The fact that Shedeur's path was littered with inconsistencies exposed how unprepared this franchise really was. First, no meaningful first-team reps. Then, confusion over who even vouched for his signing. And finally, Jimmy Haslam himself admitting he had no hand in the move. That wasn't just a bad look. That was proof there was never a unified plan to actually develop him. Fans watched as the Browns coaching staff fumbled away an opportunity, not on the field, but behind closed doors. Instead of building Shedeur into the future of the franchise, it looked like they were quietly trying to edge him out the door. No foundation, no support, no accountability, just a young quarterback caught in the crossfire of mismanagement and ego. The frustration kept boiling over because everyone could see what was happening. How can a player reach his potential if he's being starved of the very chances needed to grow? How can a coaching staff claim to evaluate him when they've never given him the same stage his teammates received? It's like telling a boxer to win a fight but keeping his gloves locked in the locker room. At the end of the day, the blame doesn't just land on Shedeur's shoulders. No, it falls squarely on a broken system that failed to protect its own investment. A system where coaches dodge accountability, executives shrug responsibility, and players are left to sink or swim without the right tools. And if that's the standard, how many other young talents have already been lost in the shuffle? So now the real question isn't just about Shedeur Sanders, it's about the entire system around him. Can a player truly succeed when the deck is stacked against them from the start? Is it fair to expect greatness when the environment is built for failure? Shouldn't coaches and executives be held just as accountable as the athletes they critique? Or is it all on the player to fight through sabotage and politics just to prove they belong?